Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasura Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasura Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Ho! Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Girivardhari. Jasura Nandana Bhajana Ranjana. Vandana Bhajana Ranjana. Jasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Ho! Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Haribo. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Sisi Radha Madhava ki, Sisi Radha Giridhari ki jai. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribraj Gachaja Shodara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Savai Charanara Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribraj Gachaja Shodara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. The appearance day of Sri Gadadhara Pandita Mahotsava ki. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So this morning we'll be reading about the pastimes of Sri Gadadhara Pandita, one of the members of the Panchatattva. It's appearance day today on this Amavasya. We have a verse on the board taken from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we will recite that together and read the purport, and then there's some selections here from Satyraja's book on Panchatattva, gathered from different sources. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so words. Badashaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani Tenho Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Sama Keha Nai. Badashaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani. Tenho, oh, that's actually the second line, isn't it? Okay, what's the first one? Badashaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani. Tenho Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Sama Kehanai. Badashaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani. Tenho Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Sama Kehanai. Badashaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani. Tenho Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Sama Kehanai. Anyone like to chant? Shaka Gadadhara Pandita Goshai. Tenha Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Kraman Kehanai. Any latent Bengalis out there? Good. Padasaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani. Yes? Badashaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani. Tenho Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Sama Kehanai. Okay, synonyms. The one thing you're saying in the verses is Gosani, but you're chanting Gosai. Is it interchangeable?
That's how it's pronounced, right? Gosai. Okay, yeah. So actually, whenever you see like the N with the
Yes.
wiggly over it, the tilde, or the N with the dot over it, if it follows a vowel, it's just a limitation of the transcription or the transliteration. Actually, like the tenho in this verse is actually pronounced teho, and the tanra is actually pronounced tar. It's just, but what it is, it's like in Bengali you have nasal vowels, so it's like you have tar and you have like tanlar.
Prabhu, can you move the mic?
Yeah. So in Bengali you have normal vowels and then you have nasal vowels. So there's a kind of a limitation in our transliteration, our ability to transliterate into English. Those like nasal vowels. So to like compensate for that, so in this verse there's tanra. That's what it says in English, but it's actually pronounced tar. But in Bengali, you pronounce it kind of like tar. So therefore, it's like a little bit of like a in the back of the throat. So,
But anyway, yeah. So whenever you see after a vowel, then same thing with Goshai. It's like Goshai, kind of like that.
Goshai.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So word for word. Bada Shaka, big branch. Gadadhara Pandit Gosai. The descendants of or disciplic succession of Gadadhar Pandit. Tenho. Gadadhar Pandit. Lakshmi Rupa, incarnation of the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. Tara, his, sama, equal, keha, anyone, nai, there is none. Translation: Gadadhar Pandit, the fourth branch, is described as an incarnation of the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna. No one therefore can equal him. Purport: in the Gauranga Desha Deepika 147 through 53, it is stated, 147 through 153, the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna, formerly known as Vrindavaneshwari, is now personified in the form of Sri Gadadhar Pandit in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Sub Damodar Goswami has pointed out that in the shape of Lakshmi, the pleasure potency of Krishna, she was formerly very dear to the Lord as Shaima Sundar Vallabha. The same Shaima Sundar Vallabha was present in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes as Gadadhar Pandit. Formerly as Lita Shaki, she was also devoted to Srimati Radharani. Thus, Gadadhar Pandit is simultaneously, what does simultaneously mean? At the same time, an incarnation of Srimati Radharani and Lalita Shaki. In the 12th chapter of this part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a description of the descendants or disciplic succession of Gadadhar Pandit. Okay. So, something to drink here. Could someone open that door? Let some fresh air in here. So, this is taken from the Sri Panchatattva, 5 Features of God, compiled by Satyaraj Prabhu, and it's the pastimes of the Panchatattva taken from many different sources. Gadadhara Pandita Shuddha Gada Bhava Rukmini Deviera Yachi Dakshina Swabhava. Gadadhar Pandit's pure ecstatic love for Sri Chaitanya was very deep. It was like that of Rukmini Devi, who was always especially submissive to Krishna. Details of Gadadhar Pandit's childhood and youth have been lost to antiquity. Does that mean the class ends here? Everything's been lost? It was a short class because everything's been lost to antiquity. But a few things are known for certain. His family is originally from Chittagong. They belong to a Varendra Shreni Brahmana lineage and were part of the Kashyapa Gotra. His father's name was Madhava Mishra and his mother's name was Ratnavati. He was born in or near the year of Mahaprabhu's birth. Most authorities say that he was 1 year younger than Lord Chaitanya. Had a brother named Vaninath, and from age of 13, when he moved to Navadvip to live at his maternal uncle's home, he was Nimai's closest friend. So they're inseparable. Okay. According to Murari Gupta's Kadacha, after Mahaprabhu returned from Gaya, Gadadhar Pandit, then called Gadai, could always be found at his side. One night, Murari tells us that when Nimai and Gadai were spending many hours discussing Krishna, Nimai uttered the following words: "In the morning you should give this prasad to the devotees." With these words, Mahaprabhu gave the garlands decorating his body to Gadadhar, and he wished him well. The next morning, all the devotees came to see Gadadhar Pandit, who, according to Mahaprabhu's request, graciously distributed the garland prasad to each one of them. During their youthful pastimes, Gadadhar brought sandalwood paste to Mahaprabhu on a daily basis. He also made garlands and personally placed them on the Lord's body. Murari Gupta reveals intimate details about the bhavas of Gauragadai, just as in their previous incarnations in Vrindavan when Radha prepared a flower bed for Krishna. in the jeweled forest pavilion, and then, drenched in love, slept with him. So also did Gadadhar prepare the Lord's bed and often slept at his side. The two boys would exchange loving stories about Radha and Krishna throughout the night, inwardly relishing the ecstatic mood of the divine couple. It should be clear that there was no bhogalingam or mundane sensual enjoyment in the pastimes of Gaur Gadai. Gadadhar Pandita was a strict brahmachari, and Mahaprabhu too was uninterested in the pleasures of the material world. The ecstasy felt by these two was one of divine nature, as was their relationship, for far surpassing the meager delectations of the mortal realm. Actual descriptions of Gadadhar and his unassailable character are given by Mahaprabhu's biographers. Kavi Kanapur describes Gadadhar as having a very sweet and beautiful disposition, cool, peaceful, and generous, if also sober and distinctly religious. According to Lochan Das Thakur, Gadadhar was a great scholar and the abode of all good qualities. When Ishwara Puri was in Navadvip, he personally tutored Gadai in Krishna Lilamrita, and in this way taught him the secrets of Krishna Lila. Now, who was Ishwara Puri? Yeah. It is said that Gadai was an excellent student and always self-satisfied. Wonderful quality to have, Atmaram. Echoing Murari Gupta, Lochan Das writes that Gadadhar remained at the Lord's side constantly, adding that Gadadhar used to always chant the Lord's name as if in a stupor. One night, writes Lochan, Gadadhar was lying by the Lord's side when, seeing his intense love, the Lord said to him, "In the morning, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, you shall attain a state of loving devotion that is rare in this world." Wouldn't it be wonderful to be told that at night? When you wake up tomorrow morning, Prabhu, you'll be in ecstatic love of Godhead. I probably couldn't sleep that night, could you? Okay. He then took off his garland and placed it around Gadadhar's neck. In the morning, let's see what happened. In the morning, when the devotees came to see the Lord, he spoke to them of the previous night's conversation. As he recounted his promise to Gadadhar, the Pandit became overwhelmed with prema just by the sounds of his words. Inspired by Mahaprabhu's words, Gadadhar went to take his bath in the Ganges. Despite the fact that he was all but immobilized by the divine feeling and trembling that engulfed his body, he somehow managed to return home and worship his Shalagram deity. After completing his worship, he returned to where Mahaprabhu was staying so he could worship him directly. Anointing the Lord with sandalwood paste, he gave him garlands and offered prayers to him. Lochan Das tells us that after such worship, Gadadhar would sleep at the Lord's feet, his mind always filled with faith and piety. Mahaprabhu often enjoyed Gadadhar's sweet words, and upon hearing them, he would fall into such ecstasy that he would anxiously take Gadadhar by his hand and dance with him in kirtan. When in this mood of transcendental bliss, the Lord would often grab Narahari with his other hand, and then three of them, Mahaprabhu, Narahari, and Gadadhar, would dance with wild abandon in the house of Srivas Pandit. Someone should do a painting of that. Maybe we should all go join that pastime. Such pastimes were secretly understood to be a facsimile of the Rasa Lila, but it was only perceived as such by Mahaprabhu's most advanced devotees. When Mahaprabhu danced with Gadadhar in Srivas' courtyard, the devotees would see Gaura's form turn black, like Krishna, and Gadadhar would transform into a golden Radharani. During these ecstatic reveries, says Lochan Das, Narahari became Madhumati, an intimate gopi follower. All those who were fortunate enough to observe this mystical vision could not control their emotions, and they would scream at the top of their lungs, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, at the top of your lungs. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Srivas Thakur's home was non-different from Vrindavan. So when you go to Srivas Anga, it's non-different from Vrindavan. Thus, while devotees performed kirtan there, the son of Sachi, Mahaprabhu, began to relive his Lila because he was in fact in the association of the cowherd boys and girls of Braja. Those devotees from Krishna Lila came again to help the Lord in this Lila of relishing rasa. All the devotees in Srivasa's home began to reveal who they truly were from Krishna's pastimes, and one by one they joined the dancing of Gaura Gadadhar. What a mystical vision. They just transformed into who they were, who they are in Krishna Lila, and joined the dance. Seeing each other in their original forms, the Lord's associates began to cry with great pleasure, realizing that the moon of Braja Krishna had appeared in Navadvip, and that they were able to participate in this very special appearance. Their crying turned into showers of nectar. Sometimes the Lord would experience the emotions of Mahaprabhu in association of Gadadhar, and sometimes the Lila would transform into that of Vrindavan, where he enjoyed transcendental love with Radharani. Seeing such amazing scenes, all the devotees called out the names of Hari and loudly glorified the Lord. According to Vrindavan Das Thakur, Gadadhar is one of the first devotees to see the Lord's amazing and before then completely unheard symptoms of prema in the house of Shuklambara Brahmachari. Although Gadadhar was not initially invited to the Lord's meeting with Shuklambara, Srivas and others, he nonetheless hid it within the house. So I guess if you want some nectar, sometimes you got to take a step and do a little something like that. You got to hide or like that. Listening from his hiding place, Gadadhar was thoroughly moved when the Lord tearfully explained to the devotees how he had on several occasions seen Krishna, but then again lost sight of him. As the Lord described his divine misfortune with greater and greater intensity, Gadadhar himself fainted. At one point, Advaita went to perform some formal worship of Nimai, but Gadadhar stopped him, saying, "You shouldn't do this, Gosai. He's just a young child," because Advaita was much older. Advaita said in response, "You will see what sort of child this is soon enough, O young Gadai." Hearing this, Gadadhar thought in amazement, if a respected and wise scholar such as Advaitacharya has accepted Nimai in this way, perhaps the Supreme Lord has indeed incarnated. This is the Lila of Advaita, assuring Gadadhar of Nimai's divinity. One day Gadadhar brought pond leaves for Mahaprabhu's pleasure. He came before the Lord in a mood of great excitement and anticipation. When the Lord saw him, he asked, "Where is my Krishna in his beautiful yellow dress?" Gadadhar was speechless. What could he say? So if Dravida came up to you and said, "Amoga, where is my Krishna in his beautiful yellow dress?" Wednesday's on the altar, right? It's yellow. Gadadhar was speechless. What could he say? Seeing the Lord's anxiety and perplexity, his own heart was torn apart. Gadadhar responded with care, "Krishna is always in your heart." Unexpectedly, when Mahaprabhu heard Gadadhar's answer, he began to tear his own chest with his fingernails. Gadai heartily took hold of his hands and tried to calm him down with a variety of pacifying statements. He said, "Krishna is coming right now. Please just relax." Nimai's mother was watching the entire exchange and became very pleased with the tolerant and loving way in which Gadai dealt with a difficult situation. She thought, "This mere child has been able to pacify him. Out of fear, I have been unable to even go near him." This is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nimai was starting to manifest all these ecstatic symptoms. After thinking like this, she said to Gadadhar directly, "Dear child, stay always at Nimai's side. Don't ever leave him or go anywhere else." So she got the invitation. He got the invitation from Sachimata to always stay with Nimai. According to some worshippers of Gaura Gadadhar, Sachi's above request was the reason Radha took a male body. In Narottam Das's Prarthana, Radha is depicted as praying for a male body so she could always remain with Krishna without the fear of being scolded by elders and respectable members of society. This desire had to find an avenue for fulfillment and did ultimately take place in Gauranga Lila. It is said that God is obliged to grant the wishes of all his devotees, and this certainly holds true for the foremost among them all, Srimati Radharani. Therefore, Gadadhar Pandita is the fulfillment of Sri Radha's desire to be born as a male. Okay. And then there's a whole very detailed explanation about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being Radha and Krishna combined and who Gadadhara Pandita is. It's a very, very subtle thing here. I'm going to skip ahead. Shortly after Mahaprabhu journeyed to Puri, immediately after his sannyas, Gadadhara arrived there and stayed for the balance of his earthly appearance. He took what's called kshetra sannyas, right? He tried to leave, but maybe that's going to be read about. Gadadhara arrived there and stayed for the balance of his earthly appearance. He also took sannyas, although he was a proper Chudandi sannyasi, as opposed to Mahaprabhu, who was a Mayavadi sannyasi. As is the only member of Panchatattva who remained an associate of the Lord in the latter portion of his Lila. Nityananda, Advaita, and Srivas Thakur remained in Navadvip area and served the mission there. After Mahaprabhu returned from his trip to Goda in 1513 AD, he went before going anywhere else to visit the temple of Tota Gopinath, where Gadadhara was staying. Murari tells a story in the following way. Along with Gadadhara and Nityananda, Mahaprabhu came to see the deity of Gopinath, whom he viewed not as a statue but as a son of the king of Nanda, Krishna. King Nanda, Krishna, playing on his flute. Because Mahaprabhu was always experienced in the mood of the gopis, he embraced Gopinath with full force and then fell into an almost paralyzed state of bewilderment, attached to the deity as if for dear life. Seeing Mahaprabhu, his golden Lord, in this mood of ecstasy, and knowing him to be Krishna, Gadadhara became exceedingly happy. Since he is directly a manifestation of Radha, Gadadhara took Mahaprabhu to his own chest and, helping him down from the altar, pacified him. Then Gadadhara cooked and offered food to Gopinath, feeding the remnants of Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda, feeding the remnants to Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. After the meal, Mahaprabhu sat comfortably with Gadadhara at his side, fully absorbed in his mood of loving exchange. He stayed in the garden with his loving associates. Now, I have a question. So many devotees were there. These very, very intimate pastimes, ecstatic pastimes, were they only viewed by the most intimate associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or were there just ordinary devotees like ourselves there also who got some special mercy? Does anyone know? Okay. It is generally accepted that Gadadhara is one of Mahaprabhu's most intimate followers. Even in his infancy, it is not often emphasized. Let's see here. One of Mahaprabhu's most intimate followers, even if this intimacy is not often emphasized. Kaviraj Goswami says that amongst the Puri associates of the Lord, Ramananda Roy worshipped him in friendship, Paramananda Puri in guardianship, and Govinda Das in servitude. Gadadhar, Jagadananda, and Subdamodar, according to Kaviraj Goswami, were absorbed in the ecstasy of the primary rasa, Madhurya. It is said that the Lord was virtually controlled by these four relationships, especially the Madhurya rasa. Even though Gadadhar's name comes first in the list of those who can control the Lord, it was Subdamodar who took the frontline position as his most intimate associate. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Subdamodar is said to be the foremost of all the Lord's sannyasi disciples. His speciality was kirtan, and Gadadhar's was reading the Bhagavad Purana. Hearing the Lila depicted in the Bhagavad from the lips of Gadadhar, the Lord would display all the ecstatic symptoms mentioned in the scriptures. Subdamodar is described as a friend of Pundarik Vijayanidhi, Gadadhar's guru. Vijayanidhi, whom Mahaprabhu called Premanidhi due to his high level of devotional love, had a tendency to dress in expensive clothes and was apparently given to luxuriant taste. He also put a lot of oil in his hair. Some Bengalis do that, a lot of oil in his hair. He was a wealthy landowner and a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. When Gadadhar first happened upon him, he thought, this person is obviously addicted to sense gratification. Right? However, When Mukunda Dat, who was with him, who introduced the two of them, uttered a verse from the Bhagavad, Pundarik broke into convulsive fits of ecstasy, showing his intense love for Krishna. Gadadhar was amazed. Externally, Pundarik appeared to be a materialist, but upon the slightest provocation, his true level of spiritual advancement came out for all to see. Gadadhar, realizing they had misjudged Vijayanidhi, decided to take him as his guru, which in this case is appropriate because in the spiritual world, Premanidhi is indeed Gadadhar's father. Pundarik was an incarnation of Maharaj Bishabhanu, the father of Radharani. For this reason, too, Mahaprabhu called him Bap, which means father. But only the most advanced devotees could understand their relationship. Bap. Is that Bengali or just Bap? Okay, Bap. So next time you see your father, call him Bap. Hey, Bap. Pop. Is that where pop comes from? Bop, pop? Probably, right? After initiation, Gadadhar spent his days in ecstasy. As one of Mahaprabhu's intimate associates in Puri, he was given a place to live on the southwest side of the Jagannath temple called Yameshwara, which included a small garden and a sandy beach known as Yameshwara Tota. Tota mean beach? Okay. There he stayed because you have Tota Gopinath, Yameshwara Tota. Threshold? Okay. There he stayed while rendering service to Mahaprabhu, and while there he made a vow to take care of the Gopinath deity the rest of his life. However, because Mahaprabhu desired to return to Vrindavan, and because Gadadhar could not live unless he went with him, his blissful union with Mahaprabhu would soon feel the pangs of separation. At first, the Lord did not leave Puri, mainly because of the sorrowful pleas and the various tricks of the devotees. Gadadhar also tried to keep the Lord from going, but he tried a different tact. He expressed a desire to go with Mahaprabhu rather than hold him back. The Lord objected to Gadadhar's request, saying that Gadadhar himself had made a vow to spend the rest of his life in Puri, Kshetra Sannyas, and that his commitment should not be broken. But Gadadhar replied, "Wherever you go, O Lord, that is the real Puri. My commitment to a permanent life of renunciation in this Puri can go to hell." Mahaprabhu said, you have your service to the deity of Gopinath here in Puri, and this service has to be taken care of. Gadadhar countered the Lord, saying, "Seeing your feet is worth 1,000,000 such services." Mahaprabhu would not hear of it, though, and he told Gadadhar plainly, if you give up your service to Gopinath, I will have to suffer the sin. If you want to please me, then stay here and don't abandon Lord Gopinath. "Don't worry about the sins," said Gadadhar. "I will take the responsibility for that. If you do not want me to go with you, I will just go alone. But I must go." Saying this, Gadadhar followed him some distance, but when they got as far as Cuttack, the Lord allowed him to join the group. Who can describe the glories of Gadadhara Pandit's love for Sri Chaitanya, for whom he gave up his own vows to Gopinath as if they were as worthless as straw on the street? It should be noted, too, that although the Lord externally expressed displeasure, he was internally pleased. Be that it may, he eventually told Pandit, "If your intention was to give up your vows and you've been successful, you have left Puri and come to a distant land. It appears as if you want to stay with me for your own happiness. Seeing you break your religious principles like this, I am very unhappy. If you want to see me happy again, then return to Puri. That is my final decision." Speaking his mind in this way, to Gadadhar the Lord mounted a small boat, which was to take him across the Mahanadi, leaving his dear associate Gadadhar on the other side. As the boat set sail, Gadadhar fell to the ground, swooning with a face full of tears. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was also there, lifted him up, saying, "Get up, Pandit. The Lord's Leelas are like this. He suffers, even breaks his own word to fulfill the devotee's promise, just as in the case of Bhishma." So now he is suffering separation from you, so your promise to Gopinath will not be broken. Mahaprabhu left Gadadhar, so how could Krishna leave Radha? In manifest Lila, sometimes Krishna does leave her, but it is only a show. In reality, they are never separated. Let's see here. Then it tells a story about Vallabhacharya, the great Vallabhacharya who started the Vallabha Sampradaya. And I'm just looking at the time here. There's some later pastimes here. I'll read this and then we'll stop. Gadadhar's later Lila with Mahaprabhu is no longer available for scrutiny, although several pastimes are widely accepted by chroniclers of the period. For example, at least two prominent biographers agree that Mahaprabhu asked Gadadhar to remain in this world for almost a year after he departed for the kingdom of God. He asked Gadadhar to wait. What was he asking to wait for? Do you know? Srinivasacharya. He said, this devotee will come, who would soon arrive and would be instrumental in spreading Gaudiya Vaishnava Dharma throughout much of India. Gadadhar was asked to wait and to teach the Bhagavatam to Srinivas. When Srinivas arrived in Puri, he saw a shadow of the Gadadhara Pandit that everyone had known. Due to separation from Mahaprabhu, Gadadhar looked like a ghost. He was thin from not eating, and his clothes were drenched with tears, and he roared incoherently, barely aware of Srinivas's presence. Srinivas was shocked to see Gadadhar in this condition. He observed ecstatic symptoms such as horripilation on the Pandit's body, but he had never seen it to this degree. The visible signs of separation were almost intolerable to behold, but Srinivas sat and looked and wept too. The next day, Srinivas ventured to speak to Gadadhar, and the sound of his voice brought Pandit Goswami to some semblance of external consciousness. At that point, Gadadhar tried to read from the Bhagavatam for Srinivas, as Mahaprabhu had wanted him to, but he could not, for his voice would invariably choke up with tears. He handed his edition of the Bhagavat to young Srinivas, who he hoped might read from it. This, however, was not to be, for the ink on the pages seemed to have been rubbed off by the moisture of Gadadhar's tears. When Srinivas pointed this out to him, he reminisced about reading the Bhagavatam to Mahaprabhu, who would cry like a lovesick schoolgirl and ruin his book. The tears that made his Bhagavat illegible came from Mahaprabhu's own eyes. After relating this story to Srinivas, Gadadhar sent the young boy to Bengal to get a new copy of the Bhagavat. Just see how rare it was to be able to get a printed copy, a written copy. Right? Oh, we don't have a book for class. Okay. Can you walk to Los Angeles? See if they can get you a book. You know? They have to write it. It's not there in the warehouse. They have to write the book and then come back. Wow. So he sent him, okay, here it is. After relating the story to Srinivas, Gadadhar sent the young boy to Bengal to get a new copy of the Bhagavat, but by the time Srinivas returned, Pandit Goswami had passed away. Consequently, it may be said that Gadadhar taught Srinivas the Bhagavat not by elucidating passages from the book, by showing Srinivas by his own example his deep mood of separation from Mahaprabhu. It is said that Gadadhar spent his last days worshipping Lord Tota Gopinath with love and devotion. That particular deity is in a sitting position, and this is rare for a deity of Krishna. The story runs as follows. Gadadhar Pandit devoted his later years to Tota Gopinath, putting flower garlands around his neck and performing various services for him throughout the day. In Gadadhar's old age, he was unable to reach up and place the flower garlands around the deity's neck, although he tried to do so with every fiber of his being. The Tota Gopinath deity, moved by Gadadhar's devotion, assumed a sitting position for the convenience of his dear devotee. Such love was exchanged between the Lord and his most cherished Gadadhar. So the deity sat down on the altar, Tota Gopinath. Jayananda's Chaitanya Mangala relates that Mahaprabhu went to the temple of Tota Gopinath when it was time for him to leave this world. From there he ascended to his eternal abode. Some say the reason he chose Tota Gopinath was because the deity was being worshipped by Gadadhara Pandita, and thus, by giving himself entirely to Gadadhar's deity as his final act on this earth, he inadvertently proclaimed his special place of Gadadhar in his life and his Lila. Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was seen to disappear in, 3 different places, according to his manifestation as Mahavishnu, as, it's interesting, into the ocean, into the deity, and there was a 3rd place. Do you remember? Was that in the temple of Jagannath, into the deity of Jagannath? Microphone?
I heard a story that there's a temple that only opens their curtain for 1 minute because the Lord tried to leave, or that
Yes.
there was the deities on the altar, and the Lord came to see them, and the king at the time couldn't distinguish the two between the real one and the deity one. So he made the rule that only the temple could be open for the curtains for 60 seconds.
Yes, there's a few temples like that in Britain. We read about that in the who is it? Well, Banki Bihar is there, but we were just reading about who was it? The appearance day last week. Disappearance day of his son was Virachandra. Yeah, Abhinanda Thakur. Abhiram Thakur, but the deities there, Gauranga deities. And they jumped off the altar during Kirtan and joined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, and the Pujari was chasing him. He's chasing him. Get back on the altar, get back on the altar. And jumped into his heart. Hridaya Chaitanya. That's why it's called Hridaya Chaitanya. Hridaya Chaitanya. Because Lord Chaitanya jumped right into his heart. So are there any other, there's a few more to read in other places, but it's time. Is there any other pastimes or things you would like to add?
Well, I have a pastime.
Okay.
Not for me, but I know about one. I think it was O.B.L. Kapoor. Remember him? Prabhupada's dear God brother, very learned. He compiled a book called The Babadis of Vrindavan.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yep.
This is an amazing book. And I remember I was on Parakram, on Navadvip Blog Parakram, and I had that book, and it was like, I was just enthralled. So one of the reason I'm mentioning is because the idea of jumping off the altar. There was an Englishman who was somehow attracted to Vaishnavism, but then World War II came around, and he was an RAF fighter, you know. So he's in a dogfight, I guess they call it, you know, with the Germans and everything, and his plane is injured, you know, it's damaged. And he's also unconscious. How do we know? Somehow the plane landed. I swear, the plane landed in an airfield in UK. So he ends up going to a place of Lucknow. He was a teacher, I think, there or something like that. And he read up about Vaishnavism, and then he's invited to all these soirees by the principal of the place, you know, the thing, and he noticed that the principal's wife, when it happened, you know, like in these soirees, she goes off into a room somewhere and just shuts herself up. So he was curious what's going on. So he went in and saw her, and it turns out she's a Vaishnavi, advanced Vaishnavi. He accepts her as his guru, and she opens a little temple up in the hills, you know, and it's Gauranga. The deities they're worshipping. It's Gaudiya Vaishnava. And these deities, they were worshiping them with so much devotion and purity that the deities would enact pastimes, and sometimes they would jump off the altar and they would act like young boys and everything, and they would have to try to scold them and get them back on the altar and all this. Anyway, it's a fascinating story. Eventually, she passed, and he went to Vrindavan, and he was the first Western guru who was initiating Indian Vaishnavas. This was like in the 50s. Wow. Or 60s, yeah. It's a fascinating book. Maybe if anyone wants to read it, I'll loan it to you. Well written, because it's Obi Kapoor.
Anything else? So there's no breakfast today. Just want to see who's awake, that's all. Shri Gadadhara Pandit ki jai.